A very warm welcome to all to the Haemophilia Awareness Talk Show, an initiative of Roche supported by Integrated Health and Wellbeing Council. I am Dr. Asavri Sawant, Public Health Specialist for Team IHW Council, and I would be moderating this show. 17th April is recognized all around the world as World Hemophilia Day. This year, 2023's theme given by the World Federation of Hemophilia is Access for All, Prevention of Bleeds as the Global Standard of Care. According to the World Federation of Hemophilia, in people with bleeding disorders, the blood clotting process doesn't work properly, with the result that they can bleed for longer than normal, and some people may experience spontaneous bleeding into joints, muscles, and other parts of their bodies, which can lead to developmental and permanent mobility issues. Hemophilia is one such bleeding problem. People with hemophilia do not bleed any faster than normal, but they can bleed for a longer time. Because their blood does not have enough clotting factor is the protein in the blood that controls bleeding. Hemophilia is considered as a rare disease, which means that it affects less number of people or has been discovered in less people. But most common type of hemophilia is called hemophilia A. People with hemophilia A do not have enough clotting factor 8. About 21 of every 100,000 males suffer from hemophilia A. A less common type is called hemophilia B. People with hemophilia B do not have enough clotting factor 9. About 4 in 100,000 males have hemophilia B. The result is the same for people with hemophilia A and B. That is, they bleed for a longer time than normal, but the therapy that they require varies from each other. According to an article of Indian Journal of Medical Research, hemophilia A and B are prototypes of common genetic disorders. Despite significant underdiagnosis, India harbors the highest number of patients with hemophilia, according to a global survey done by the World Federation of Hemophilia in 2020. Although a great progress has been made in the last decade with the advent of new therapeutic approaches such as long-acting coagulation factor concentrates, non-replacement therapies such as gene therapies, conventional agents such as plasma-derived or recombinant concentrates still remain the mainstay of management for these individuals in India. For many years, people believed that only men and boys or males in general could have symptoms of hemophilia, such as bleeding in general and specifically bleeding into joints, and that women who carry the hemophilia gene do not experience bleeding symptoms themselves. We now know that many women and girls do experience symptoms of hemophilia as well. For discussing this topic in a great detail, we have an eminent expert here with us today, Dr. Suresh Hanagawadi. Dr. Suresh is the Medical Director of Karnataka Haemophilia Society, Davangere, and he is also the Professor of Pathology at JJM Medical College, Karnataka. Karnataka Haemophilia Society has been providing free medicines for rehabilitation for hemophilia patients for the past 4 decades. Dr. Suresh Hanagawadi himself is a patient of hemophilia disorder and heads the 15-bed center, which is the only one among 7 chapters of the Haemophilia Federation of India in the state to provide full scale of facilities. Dr. Suresh, we welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Namaskar.
Let us start with the very first question on making people aware about what is hemophilia.
Hemophilia is inherited bleeding disorder in which blood doesn't clot properly. And this can lead to prolonged bleeding on injury or even spontaneously.
I hope the audience is made aware on what hemophilia is. So can you also please highlight the types of hemophilia that are seen? I believe there are many names given for this disease and its types.
There are several different types of hemophilia. It depends upon the type of factor deficiency. Most commonly, factor 8 deficiency occurs, and we call it as classical hemophilia or hemophilia A. And the remaining factor 9 deficiency, we call it as hemophilia B or Christmas disease.
So just an interesting side lane. Why is it called the Christmas disease?
Actually, Christmas, because hemophilia, clinically, they have same symptoms and manifestations. Okay. And when some investigations were going on, so they found there is one more factor deficiency, that is factor 9, which was done on a patient named Christmas. And that is the reason we call it as Christmas disease.
Okay. Thank you so much for explaining us what the different types of hemophilia are commonly there. Now, we would also want to know that who is affected the most with hemophilia? Who can get affected?
Hemophilia is predominantly affects males. Hence, one hemophilic is seen for every 5,000 male births. And hemophilia is more common, about 4 times more common than hemophilia B. And 50% of these cases will be severely affected.
Thank you so much, sir, for explaining us that. But why is hemophilia predominantly a male disease? Is it possible for women also to have hemophilia?
No, in our medical term, we call it as hemophilia is X-linked recessive disorder. To understand this, let me give a brief background about some basics of the genetics. Normally, there are 23 pairs of chromosomes. Out of that, one pair is sex chromosome. And in males, we have one X and one Y. And in females, there is no Y. Both are X chromosome. And the clotting protein production in any person is directed by a gene which is located on X chromosome. Okay, so that is the reason, since males have one X only, that's why they suffer. Whereas females, though they have 2 X chromosome, so one of them is affected, and that's why they do not suffer, but they can carry the disorder. So that is the reason we say hemophilia is X-linked recessive disorders. Males are sufferers and females are carriers. But sometimes in consanguineous marriages, no, so there is a possibility of marrying a known hemophilic and known carrier. In such situations only, even hemophilia can be seen among females also. We can call hemophilia. So this is just the brief background about the genetics.
Thank you so much, sir, for explaining us that answer. Our next query is what happens in hemophilia. So can you please help us in understanding that?
Hemophilia, as it is a bleeding disorder, lack of particular clotting protein. So they have prolonged bleeding on even trivial trauma. So they may bleed externally and as well as internally. The most common site of bleeding in hemophilia is joints. So, but they can bleed in any part of the body. If they bleed in skin, we call the ecchymosis. And if they bleed in the muscle, it makes a collection of blood inside the muscle, we call hematoma. Or any vital organs, if they bleed, so it can cost the life of the patient. It is a life-threatening bleed, we call. It may be abdominal bleed, it may be brain bleed, and if treatment is not given immediately, so it becomes life-threatening.
Thank you so much, sir. So coming back on the same query that you cleared for us, that females are carriers and it affects predominantly males. So can you please highlight again, can hemophilia affect both males and females, and how is it transmitted for our population, for our audience who is from both medical and non-medical backgrounds in easy language?
Hemophilia occurs because of mutation on that gene, which is responsible to produce this clotting protein. Okay, so this hemophilia may run in family once it is established in that particular couple, but also 30% of cases we don't see any previous family history. So then we can attribute it to spontaneous mutations. So mutation is the main cause of hemophilia.
Thank you so much, sir. So what are the common symptoms that are seen in somebody suffering from hemophilia?
So as I told you, they bleed in joints, muscles, and since it is lifelong, the repeated bleeding in joints and muscles can cause disabilities.
Thank you so much, sir. So what are the visible clinical signs other than bleeding? Can a normal person identify that if a male is excessively bleeding, he might be suffering from hemophilia, or is it just normal other bleed? How to differentiate that?
Hemophilia can be categorized depending upon the severity of the factor deficiency. Okay. So those patients who have less than 1%, we call them severe. And these patients bleed spontaneously. There may not be any injury. They can bleed spontaneously and repeatedly. Whereas those patients who have more than 1%, but within 5%, we call them moderate category. They may not have spontaneous bleeds, but definitely they bleed on trauma. Traumatic bleeds are more common. Whereas the third category is, according to me, is very risky and dangerous. These patients may not bleed at all in their lifetime unless they come across any major challenges. It may be a surgery, it may be a road traffic accident, or most commonly, it may be a tooth extraction, and it may be a ritual circumcision where bleeding doesn't stop. Then the patient is subjected for investigation and diagnosed that he has got hemophilia. So these are three situations we diagnose hemophilia.
Thank you so much, sir. So as per what you explained, hemophilia can cause, very severe lethality if the surgery person is not aware that the patient is suffering from hemophilia. So what are the complications that hemophilia can result in, if you can highlight us that?
As I told you, they have a tendency to bleed internally, mainly in joints and muscles. So that can cause chronic joint disease. We call arthropathies, hemophilic arthropathies, deforming arthropathies. These are the common. So they bleed in different parts of the body. Like as I told you, most common is knee joint, but it can also be seen in other joints like ankle, elbow, or even hip joint. And in the muscle, they can bleed in any muscle. Most debilitating or disable bleeding is iliopsoas muscle, or even the hand muscles, which can cause permanent disability. We call Volkmann's ischemic contracture. So these are some complications. And if patient have bleed in vital organs like brain, so that is really, if treatment is not given, the patient may die.
Okay. So as you portrayed the picture, it is very important for somebody suffering from hemophilia to inform their doctors and medical practitioners before they go into any treatment or surgery that yes, I am suffering from hemophilia, and appropriate care is required and should be given to the patient accordingly. So can you also please highlight how hemophilia is tested, and why is it important for hemophilia patient to get tested regularly for any blood-borne infections?
Hemophilia diagnosed clinically because of the repeated bleeding, internal bleeding, joint bleeding, and all those. With those, we do certain laboratory investigations. to detect which factor they are deficient of. Because clinically, we can't say whether they are factor 8 deficiency or factor 9 deficiency. That has to be done in a basic coagulation laboratory. That is the specific diagnosis. And specific diagnosis is crucial to treat the patient with appropriate factor concentrate. So that's why lab diagnosis is very, very important. And if early diagnosis, early intervention, and we can prevent disabilities, we can prevent complications also. Okay? And also these patients, because they take repeated blood and blood products where these factor concentrates are not available, they are at risk of getting bloodborne infections, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. So these are the risks. That's why we advise them to take vaccination against hepatitis A and hepatitis B. And you asked what are the routine, this thing. Annual comprehensive checkup is very important for any hemophilia. At least annual comprehensive checkup should include the screening for all these diseases, HIV, HBV, HCV, and also very important nowadays, nearly around 20 to 25% of patients after receiving the factor concentrate during their lifetime, they develop antibodies against the factor they receive. We call inhibitors. And if patient develops inhibitors, factor replacement becomes totally ineffective. So that's why we advise our patients to get the screening for inhibitors also periodically. And also the health checkup, that is physiotherapy, joint status. Physiotherapy is very, very important, especially in our country, because with proper exercise, physiotherapy, we can make the patient to have a strong and a stable joint. Strong muscle and stable joint will not bleed repeatedly. And that's how it has got an impact on the health of the patient. So, and also proper dental care. Every year, dental care, caries tooth, all these has to be checked and treated appropriately.
Thank you so much, sir. You also gave us the tips for hemophilia patients to stay healthy. So that was very amazing. At the same time, we want to know, as this is a lifelong disease, it's a blood-related disease, so the patient would be getting treated almost entire his life. So is hemophilia curable? Is it completely curable? Or can it just be prevented and treated lifelong?
No, at present, hemophilia treatment, the mainstay is replacement of deficient clotting protein at every instance of bleed. Here, there are two types of treatment. Episodic treatment we call. Whenever they bleed, at the earliest sign of bleed, infusion of the deficient factor. That is one. Whereas the prophylaxis, that is according to our World Federation of Hemophilia, that is the gold standard treatment in hemophilia, because that prevents disabilities. So because of this, our children can go to school, get good education, and placed in a very good jobs, so that they can lead a quality life as par with others.
Thank you so much, sir. So can you also please highlight what are the tips that we can keep in mind to prevent hemophilia? How can hemophilia be prevented?
So hemophilia is genetic disorder. It has got a lot of financial and socio-economic implications in the society, in the healthcare sector. So that's why it is better to prevent the birth of new hemophilic children. It is possible. The first step is we need to identify who are the carriers in the hemophilia families. All the families in the hemophilia need not be carriers. There is a chance if she has got normal X chromosome from her parents, she may not be a carrier. So unless we do carrier detection test, you cannot say that she is a carrier. Suppose if she is carrier, then prenatal diagnosis can be offered. Prenatal diagnosis, that is, we can subject the pregnant woman for amniocentesis and other genetic tests, and we can detect whether the fetus is carrying hemophilia gene or not. And legally, they are allowed to undergo the medical termination of pregnancy. And this is very important in our country. We should educate our patients. We should give their proper genetic counseling to prevent the birth of hemophilic children and continue in their families further.
So coming on to the very last question of this session, this very insightful session we had with you. So as today is World Hemophilia Day, what would be your tips for all our viewers watching to stay healthy with hemophilia and staying healthy in generally? What would be your tips?
Yeah, my tips first to our public. Hemophilia is a rare blood disease. Rare. It is genetic disorder, lifelong disorder. They need support from the public. So that's why the public awareness is very important. Media awareness is very important, so that we can detect more and more number of those who are unidentified. Because hemophilia, as I told you, 1 in 5,000 male births. There are so many children or adults with hemophilia still are not accessible to diagnosis. Still, they are not accessible to laboratory diagnosis for specific diagnosis. So that's why, as the theme of this World Hemophilia Day, we should make accessibility to all these inherited bleeding disorder to become diagnosed, to detect them specifically, so that we can provide them treatment and psychosocial support, economical support, so that we can make their life. They lack only clotting protein in the blood, but not gene in the life. Only thing is we should bring them to the healthcare network, so that they can also lead a normal quality life in this society. And the tips to hemophilics, because hemophilia being a genetic disorder, so most of the adolescent boys, they get depressed, and they may not have, they keep on just feeling bad for having hemophilia. Why God has given only to me, and all those. So these psychosocial, we need to empower them with a psychosocial support. And that's why I always tell that our hemophilic boys that we lack only clotting protein in the blood. So we are equally efficient, equally competent in this world, and we can become anything education wise and placement in the job wise and achievement wise. We can do anything in this world.
Thank you so much, sir. Did you know hemophilia is also known as the royal disease? According to the National Haemophilia Foundation, a New York-based charity, hemophilia is known as royal disease because it affected the royal families of England, Germany, Russia, and Spain in the 19th and 20th centuries. The family pedigree of Queen Victoria, who ruled England from 1837 to 1901, shows a number of hemophilic descendants, as she was believed to have been the carrier of hemophilia B. It is said that Queen Victoria passed on this trait to 3 of her 9 children. Prince Leopold, Duke of Albany, who was the 8th child of Queen Victoria, had hemophilia and died of a hemorrhage after a fall at the age of 30. Queen Victoria's daughters, Alice and Beatrice, were carriers and passed on the disease to several of their children. Alexei, who is the son of Tsar Nicholas of Russia, and Alex, the daughter of Alice, had hemophilia. The disease was carried through various royal family members for 3 generations after Queen Victoria. With that, we come to the end of this very interesting session on hemophilia awareness. We thank Dr. Suresh Hanagawari for taking out time from his busy schedule and for sharing a wealth of knowledge and information with us today.
Thank you and your team for giving this opportunity, because this is one way of creating awareness I thank Roche also for this. Thank you.
Thank you. We hope the session was highly insightful and informative. We thank Roche for this brilliant initiative, for spreading hemophilia awareness, and for partnering with us on this activity. Lastly, we also thank all our viewers for staying with us till the very end. Thank you all very much. With that, we close off this session. Thank you and goodbye.